A very good evening and welcome to the Fourth Estate. Charles Mwangushampagi. And tonight we discuss the by-election in Luwero, the latest by-election and possibly one of the last as we head into the next election in 2016. That by-election contested by 4 women after a court ruling sent Brenda Nabukenya out of parliament. She had also come in another by-election where the initial winner was thrown out over a contestation of how she won. Brenda Nabukenya won 38,582 votes, which was an astounding and emphatic victory, defeating her NRM rival who polled in the region of 20,000 votes. Tonight, let me introduce Brenda Nabukenya, recently re-elected as a member of parliament for a constituency you had been representing before you were thrown out by court process. Very nice to have you on Fourth Estate tonight.
Thank you.
We were able to get someone from the National Resistance Movement. We made a lot of efforts to get that camp represented in this discussion, but we're unable. But we'll be discussing that by-election and the role of a member of parliament, especially if you have to go through this series of by-elections. Let me also introduce my colleague, Chris Obore. Chris, very nice to have you.
Thank you.
Let me start with Brenda. Congratulations on your win. And how did you manage to pull this off? Because people were worried for you and said, immediately you knew you're going through a court battle, you should have been spending more time in the constituency, but you spent more time in Kampala and that university where you're studying. How did you manage to pull off?
Thank you so much. I knew from what go after winning the first by-election, I was taken to court through a petition. And actually there were 3 of them. One from my colleague, the one I contested with, from the NRM, and another from one of the other candidates. So I was very sure that to some extent I would be going back to an election. So I don't agree that I wasted a lot of time in Kampala, but I managed to divide my time well so that I could go back, meet my people, come to parliament, and also attend school.
You're a member of the Democratic Party.
Yes.
And you had all the opposition parties by your side, but you also got the former vice president, who's a member of the National Resistance Movement, was national vice chairperson for Central Region of the NRM to campaign for you. How did you manage to pull that off?
Of course, as a candidate, I needed everyone to support me. When you're standing, when you're in a campaign, you really want everyone to come on board, support you. And I think Kenya has a former vice president. He's well known, and also he knew the problems of Luwero. He was better placed.
He should have thrown that weight behind the NRM candidate.
Of course,
Rebecca Nalwanga was the NRM candidate. He chose to come on your side.
No, I think that question can be answered well by him, but the fact that he knew better that most of the pledges from the government to the people of Luwero were not fulfilled. So he knew that as a Ugandan, as a former vice president, he needed to support the people's voice. And I think that's what he decided to support me.
The NRM has said that he will face the disciplinary committee. Are you, do you sympathize with him?
Of course I do, but I must say that before you take someone for disciplinary action, you must also find out why he went ahead to do such a thing. Because we are in a multi-party system. He would have pledged his support to the NRM candidate, but he opted for an opposition candidate. So the party should also ask, why did a former vice president, why did a top leader who was contesting for Secretary General in the NRM party, why did he back an opposition candidate? If you don't answer such a question, then however much you go to the disciplinary committee, you might not be able to solve some of the problems. Yeah.
You, from the experience you had in last week's by-election, what lessons did you learn as an opposition? Because for the first time you had Olaro Tunu, Norbert Mao, Kiza Besigye, Mugisha Muntu, Mwanga Kivumbi, Wafula Ogutu, all seated on the same side with you, campaigning for you, which normally doesn't happen. What lessons did you learn as an opposition?
Of course, it is very, very important that the opposition stands as one, like in a unified way. Because if we had maybe several candidates, there would be diverted, it would be a diverted campaign whereby you have several people having similar issues. But when the FDC and all the other opposition parties decided to support me, I realized that it would be very easy for us to win this seat, and also an example or a lesson that would maybe help the next decisions that we take as the opposition, especially in campaigns where we want to have also a government.
You went into parliament in December 2011.
Yes.
For the first time you went into parliament.
Yeah.
The first by-election was held December 2011. So between December 2011 to May 2014, you had been a member of parliament. What difference do you make? Because people look at this parliament, especially the 9th parliament, and ask, what difference does it make to spend so much money on a house as big as parliament, electing people? In your case, 3 by-elections, I mean this was the second by-election, 3 elections for the same position.
Yes.
The cost to the taxpayer is immense. Yes. Your productivity, your output as a parliament, I don't know how it compares for you, does it?
I think you're right to some extent. Besides, there's so much money that is being spent to have new members of parliament, or like by-elections. I think it's colossal amounts of money from the taxpayers, and it is costly for the people who pay tax. But we must have leaders also in place. The general picture should be that maybe the parliament is supposed to be smaller in number, and we have more leaders like at a lower level. But if we don't realize that, you're still going to see much more costs, because we have a government which thinks that we must have many leaders, and I think it is costly, but it should be brought down and parliament resized to have a smaller number, because I strongly believe good laws are not made by many people. Even if you had a few people, they could make good laws.
You're having a second chance as an MP, because you could have had only one chance. What new thing are you going to do in this second chance that you have as a member?
Of course, I had very limited time in parliament the first time, and I had several issues to really bring out on behalf of my people. There were several issues that concerning the war issues. I've been tasked by several people to come out clearly with a motion on how Luweero has benefited in this peaceful time. They were burdened with the war, but they think they've not been party or cheered the peaceful time in Uganda, as in when it comes to social services, which is the general problem in Uganda. So these are some of the things that I plan to raise. Also, add on good policy, whereby I think we need to bring a lot of money into those things that can benefit the taxpayer, common person. Like Luwero is an agricultural district, whereby most of our people are farmers, and you expect to see much more money in agriculture if we are to change and empower them. So I strongly believe these maybe 2 years or 1.5 years, I really need to focus on such areas whereby I could see a lot of contribution going to our people.
Chris, I know you have a lot of questions for Brenda, but let me start with this question to you. If you look at the performance of the opposition in this by-election and the involvement of the former vice president, did this come to you as a surprise, or to us as the media as a surprise, that Nabukenya would go, not only be seen dancing with the opposition, but hugging Nabukenya here? People are asking what is the relationship between Bukenya and Nabukenya. They belong to the same Mugabe clan, though they are not blood related. But this, did the campaign surprise you in any way? And are there lessons that the opposition should pick up?
There are very many lessons, not just for opposition, but for a country. One, Luwero in the NRM times has a unique situation, having hosted the 5-year guerrilla war that eventually brought the NRM to power. And you remember, President Museveni opted to stage it in Luwero, an area where he did not have a lineage. But Luwero managed to host him. And everybody knows what it means being a theater of war. There is a lot of destruction. And perhaps the hopes of the people of Luwero who gave chicken, who gave cows, surrendered maize, perhaps have not been realized. And we can see now Luwero beginning to protest in a way to say, look here, we waited for long. But the bigger question to be asked is, why has Luwero been in a situation it is now, having been recognized as an area where the rebellion was housed? Why? But again, it is now beyond Luwero. The Luwero situation is a situation in Kabale, it's a situation in Kasese, it's a situation in Soroti, it's a situation in Gulu, it's a situation in Amuru. So Luwero now can no longer have the monopoly to say it is the most marginalized area. They can say they hosted the rebellion that brought NRM to power, and they can ask a question, why have we in this situation? But they cannot say we are the only impoverished, because I think the poverty in the NRM is democratically distributed.
But do you think, Chris, that the contribution of Luwero as the theater of the struggle that brought this government to power and the impoverishment that Nabukenya talks about here, that you talk about is evenly distributed across the country, played a role in getting Nabukenya here elected in the first election, the first by-election, and then getting re-elected again?
I think it is not just the distribution of poverty. It is the failure of all government programs in that area. Remember, Luwero has not lost out in terms of representation at the higher table. Soroti, Amuru, Kitugum can rightly say, perhaps we are missing out because we are not on the round table. We are not in the dining table. But Luwero, since NRM came to power, has always been around the dining table. And Luwero has had a unique opportunity in terms of programming. You know, it's called the Luwero Triangle. Before these other programs came, Luwero had a program. The biggest question Luwero should be asking, in spite of all of these programs, in spite of having people at the high table, why are we where we are? That I identify with them. But in terms of saying now Luwero is more impoverished than other areas, I would say no. The poverty is democratically distributed. It is in Kigezi, it is in Amuru, it is in Luwero, it is in Bukedea, it is in Karamoja. So why? That's a bigger debate. The other element is the opposition coming to snatch the victory in Luwero. What does it mean? I think one, of course, they have a right. They now have the bragging rights that we have defeated because the president was there, so were the ministers, and there were also other party presidents there. But the question I would ask is, it appears the only point of convergence for the opposition is in by-elections. And perhaps is in the feeling that get out Museveni first. I am not sure whether they have a bigger convergence than that. If it was not Luwero, where of course DP has an upper hand. Nabukenya is a DP. And you know, DP is very vibrant in Uganda. If I had seen Olaro Tunu, Kisa Besije, Muntu, Waf, Mao, converging in Bushenyi and being able to bring a UPC parliamentarian, then you see them converging in Tungamo and be able to bring a DP parliamentarian. Then you would realize that the effort of the opposition is beginning to politically bear. But if you go to a place where you already have an advantage and you win, sometimes your celebration may be far-fetched.
Okay, let's pick it up after a short commercial break. We'll be right back.